I will be starting off, and I'm going to go with the very first question that it was typed into the chat. This is from Carbonated Milk, which is ketchup a soup? See, the problem is not whether or not ketchup is or isn't a soup. The problem is that soup, by its definition, is a faulty term. Really, when the lexicon of the word soup developed, it was misunderstood. Originally, it comes from the Latin, which means soupe, or to bathe. You see, the original soups were the bathhouse themselves. So do you really think ketchup is an old, gross man with a couple of fig leaves wrapped around his head? I think not. Therefore, ketchup is a condiment, which comes from the French, or condimente. And condimente, as it's known in the original French, that was pre the invasion of the Western Front, it really meant that there was a truth to it, you see. That's what condiment comes from. It means to be true, because it reveals the true flavor of the dish in which you put things on. It's really just as simple as that, you see. So it's not whether or not ketchup is a soup or a condiment. It is both, because it's both true, but it also is bathwater at its purest form. Oh, I'm getting a lot of twos. Oh, well, clearly you... Oh?
You had him in the beginning there.
I think so. Well, it looks like whatever the next vote is,
yeah, we're gonna see, just depending on what the next vote is.
Oh boy!
There we go.
You're
good.
Yeah.
All right, Tom. All right. Let me.
All right, I get one more question. Go ahead and throw the next question at me.
All right. Let's see what we got coming up. How do you debone a bonefish?
How to debone a bonefish. First, one must acquire a bonefish. The best way to acquire a bonefish is to sacrifice some of your own bones. As we know, they grow back, so it's not a huge sacrifice, but it is going to be necessary in order to attract enough bonefish to your island. By throwing some bones out there and arranging them in the shape of a fish, and letting it ferment overnight, a bonefish will crawl out of the sand the next morning, for which you can then debone. I'm seeing a lot of no on this one.
They're not about it.
They're not about
calling
it.
you on this one.
I'm really not getting it. So I believe next up we have Steve. I'm sorry I could not persuade you otherwise. Steve.
Let's see.
Right, what's my question?
Steve, your question is, who really benefited from Pluto's demotion?
All right. Well, to look at Pluto's demotion is to realize who stands to be promoted from it. And personally, I think it's Jupiter, because as we all know, Jupiter faked an illness to get out of fighting in Vietnam. Now, that's not the only reason that other planets would want Pluto demoted, as Uranus and Neptune both have their interests in the oil mining industry, and Pluto is a known environmental activist. So they don't want Pluto's radical ideas of eco-conservationism to be at the forefront of the political discussion when it comes to celestial objects.
But it looks like you passed.
They bought that one, Steve.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Your next question is, how do we know we're all seeing the same color?
How do we know we're all seeing the same color? Quite honestly, it's because the government tells us that it's true. Now, the government cannot lie to us, as we have seen previously, with all of the diversions about Pluto and Pluto not being faithful to their wife. The government cannot physically lie to us. So knowing that all colors are the same across the spectrum is really important to me, because I can only see one solid thing of gray. And if it weren't for the government telling me that, I might believe that art exists, which it doesn't. And if we all start going around believing that art exists, then who's gonna fight in our wars? Who's going to start understanding science? Art is just a distraction built from the ashes of the civilizations before us, and now we will continue on into our destined our destiny to be the only country that exists.
Well, Steve,
Oh.
it's looking pretty close.
But
I
you
think
lost
we
right
can
at the end. It's 50-50
it's
now.
50-50.
Also,
Bye.
JMLD42, thanks so much for that sub.
Thank you
Yes,
for the
thank you so much
sub.
for the sub.
Greatly
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate it a lot.
Stick around. We've got a lot of fun things
Oh,
planned tonight.
we just need
Steve,
one.
I
I'm
think
gonna say,
I think I got booted.
50-50.
Steve, I'm gonna say if it's 50-50, that's not enough to win them over, which means we're gonna move
Yeah.
on to our next contestant. And I have got a.
Oh, it's fact.
It's
Who's
fact.
this
I'm up.
vote?
Oh,
Second.
Oh, someone voted one.
Oh no.
It's okay. It's Max's turn.
it's
All right,
okay. We'll
moving on
jump
to
in.
Max. Too late, Rohan, but thanks for.
Thank you, Rohan, for being here.
Oh, man.
Max, your question is magic genetic, or can one learn the arcane arts through hard work? And let's get more questions for our contestants, please.
Sure. This is a great question. Thank you so much for whoever asked it. I actually get this one a lot. Magic is not genetic. It is a long-standing belief that magic is genetic, but that's actually largely due to the privilege that's received by magical families. Once you are already in a magical field, your parents are given an amount of clout in the magic community, and that really gives the magical children a step up in schooling and whatnot, and that actually enhances their magical ability simply due to their circumstance. And it's really actually a detrimental stigma to believe that magic is genetically inherited. It is completely through just your situation. It's much more by nurture rather than by nature. And that is why if we were to find a more equitable system of magic, then it would be much better representation of who finds their magical ability.
Oh, Max, you really got them back
no
on
one believes
board.
me? Is that-
No, it's pretty
It's
50-50 right
50-50.
now. This is a very decisive conversation.
Okay.
There's might be a lot of magical families in the chat tonight, Max.
Yeah.
Oh wow, a lot of
Oh, and
magic
it goes to fiction.
Oh, Max, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
But you
damn.
couldn't convince them.
Thanks, AJ, for that deciding vote.
Nice try, Max. Nice
Is
try.
that Max's first one?
That was his first one. Next up is Dan.
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
are we living or slowly dying?
Yeah, we are definitely slowly dying. Every day I wake up and my bones hurt more. I believe that I am losing saliva quicker than I am getting it out of my mouth. There's just a lot of things. Childhood is sort of when you're at the peak of life, and the second that you get sort of past the age of 8, it's all downhill from there. So I would definitely say that we are dying and not really living. We haven't lived since we were about 6 months old.
Well, it looks
People
like he has-
believed it.
Hell yeah.
That was some pretty relatable content. And thank you, Foolish Bronco, for the follow. So we're going to go ahead and use your suggestion next for Dan. Dan, why is it always the pinky toe that gets stubbed?
See, you actually have to look at the Latin root of the word pinky. Pink actually stands for little, and E actually stands for will get hurt a lot. So while it is at the exterior of the foot, when you think about the Latin roots that the pinky is well aware of, as it had to take Latin when it went through middle school and high school, it decides to sort of jump on the grenade for the whole foot in a certain way. When it sees that leg of a table coming at it, it will protect all the other 4 toes beforehand because it knows its Latin roots and it's ready for the SATs.
Wow, it started off as a strong no from the audience, but then it jumped way the opposite direction. And we're going to go ahead and give you one final question.
All right.
Where do the best jelly beans come from?
Well, the best jelly beans really come from the natural made jelly that the giants make up in the sky. So if you ever visited the giants up in Gightonium, as the professionals will call it, they are obsessed with making jelly. And all you sort of needed was some little kid to come along with beans for them to realize how to shape it together. Ever since that day happened about 300 years ago, they've been impressively working on the formula for jelly beans. They're actually the ones that make all of the filthy flavors as well, like poop and other forms of poop. But they have perfected the perfect cherry, the perfect watermelon, any other flavor that you like from the
I'm
Giants.
sorry, Dan. Not a single person in the chat believes that.
like fuck that.
Which I believe moves us on to our last contestant, our last brainstorm. This one really struck me, so thank you, Carbonated Milk. Alex, if a vampire bites a zombie, does the zombie become a vampire, or does the vampire become a zombie?
Excellent question. Excellent question. This has confused geneticists for a very long time, but you see, the real trick of it is you have to know where on the evolutionary tree vampires and zombies both lie. Once you find that, you'll actually determine that what they'll create is werewolves. Werewolves did not exist before both vampires and zombies existed. They are actually a hybrid of a vampire biting a zombie. Now, some people think that the dead flesh of the zombie will not allow the vampire to transfer its vampirism onto the host. But the fact of the matter is, while it doesn't transfer it fully, it does create a mutated strain. This strain leads to a lot more hair growth, some bones being protruded more than others, like claws and snouts. And overall, it creates what people believe to be a werewolf.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like you did not convince enough people. It was very close.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. If you enjoyed what you saw, be sure to like and subscribe.
And to see more Show and Tell content, follow us at twitch.tv/showandtelllive.
Or check out our other social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope to see you soon.